Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. So today I'm doing the second half of my wrap up for August. I did read a lot of books during this month, and I did a video a couple weeks ago of what I had read halfway through the month. So now I'm going to just briefly review each book that I read for the remainder of the month. So first book was Nightmare by Chad Nicholas. Chad sent me a free ebook copy of this, and I see that his book has been making the rounds. It's a brand new horror book. I'm going to link all the books below that I'm going to talk about. And this book was it's like a psychological horror story about a man who's having these nightmares about a trauma that he had as a child where he was horribly, horribly abused. And I don't want to give too much of it away, but it definitely tapped into my fear of birds. Let me just put it that way. And throughout the book, he has these little illustrations of crows. That was pretty scary. So I thought the overall concept of this book was really great. It was very well plotted. The story kept my attention the whole time, and it did scare me. So in that respect, I thought it was very good. The writing style and the character development did kind of have a very basic feel to it, which I guess was my only criticism. But check it out if it sounds like something you might enjoy. Next, this book is a crazy paperback from hell that I've had on my shelf for a while and decided, you know what, I can't resist this cover anymore. It's luring me into its essence, and that's The Foundling by Frank Lauria. Cover just cracks me up. And it does kind of depict that scene that you're seeing on this cover in the book, I'm happy to say. So this book, just the tagline, imagine if Rosemary's Baby had a baby. I mean, that just grabs you. What I really did like about this book, and I also gave this book 3 stars, is it's a fun read. Sometimes you read some of these older paperbacks from hell with these great covers, and they never really quite live up to the cover. I feel like this one did live up to the cover. So this book is kind of like the bad seed theme, where you have this child that was born to this really kind of a horrible woman, and she goes into this Catholic orphanage. She gets adopted by this family, and the father is a rock musician whose own daughter gets electrocuted during a rock concert. I have to admit, I laughed. It's so over the top. But it's great. That's what makes it great. So, of course, they adopt her, and she's beautiful, and she's sweet. But horrible things start happening, and she's this it's unusual, especially today, to read a book about like a seductive 13-year-old. I was thinking about that movie with Drew Barrymore, Poison Ivy. Wasn't there something like that? So that is The Foundling. Really over the top, really crazy, but yeah, I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. This is a book that's been on my shelf for a long time, and I finally read The Wolfen by Whitley Strieber. It's kind of a 70s classic. There's a movie version of it too, which I also watched. I remember when the movie came out and when the book came out as well. This is his first novel. So this is about 2 cops who discover that there is a murder spree happening in New York City. This is in the 70s. So it has that kind of gritty New York cop story feel to it. And this something wild is tearing people apart. So they're investigating what this is. And they discover that the creatures, the werewolf creatures, because you can know it's going to be a werewolf story, is called the Wolfen, which is a different take on the werewolf story. It's like its own kind of species of werewolf. He did the same idea in The Hunger, that book, the vampire book that he wrote. And so that made a really nice companion piece to this book. If you like a different take on a werewolf story or a vampire story, I would recommend The Hunger and The Wolfen. I enjoyed both these books. I liked The Hunger a little better, but this was good. I gave this, 3 or 4 stars, I think. Then I watched the movie. The movie's very different. It has a different theme altogether. It does get into this thing. The book didn't do this, but in the movie, it gets into this thing where Native Americans are part of this Wolfen tribe almost. I thought that was an interesting angle. The movie really kind of starts off slow. Like at first I thought, oh, this movie's it's really slow. It's not very good. It did get very good at the end. I really did enjoy the Wolfen book and movie. Okay, I'm a little embarrassed about this, but I read New Moon, the second book of the Twilight Saga. I shouldn't be ashamed, just put it out there, by Stephenie Meyer, only because I've never read it. And it's been sitting on my shelf, so I've been trying to go through the books that I've had forever and just dipping in a little bit. So I read New Moon, and I also watched the movie. To me, this is pure popcorn. I do like to dip into some YA books every once in a while, and so many of them copy Twilight. And I'm reading another book now that is almost identical to not the story, but like the plot points to Twilight, because it was such a phenomenon, and it was made so much money that people, just like Harry Potter, people want to know, like, what's the formula. In fact, I have a book on my shelf called The Bestseller Code that I got a couple years ago. It was very interesting, where it breaks down a book. I think they actually do Twilight. I know they break down 50 Shades of Grey, like, by plot points, if you can imagine, and kind of show, why it kind of works and why it's so popular. Now, a lot of people now love to hate on Twilight, and they say it's problematic. I mean, there's so many videos on BookTube talking about how problematic it is, but look, I just read The Foundling, and if you want problematic, read this book. But no, I don't really, nothing in this book offends me. I think it's very entertaining. It's interesting how kind of slow it is, but it does kind of get under your skin, and I think the reason for that is the strength of this relationship. And I do love the drama when Edward leaves Bella, and then we just are paging through the different months. It's like, October, November, December, just the blank page. I thought that was really kind of cool and kind of dramatic. So I do enjoy Twilight. I know what I'm getting into when I read it, and I will continue probably reading the next one. I mean, I don't feel like a rush because I kind of know what happens, but when I'm in the mood, it's fun to read a YA book, and why not just go with Twilight? So the last book that I read for the month of August, and this was not the order I read them, just kind of the order I'm talking about them. And unfortunately, this was my most disappointing read of the group, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. And I did try to take some notes because I did this as a buddy read with E.D. Lewis. I will link his, E.D. Lewis Reviews is the name of his channel. I will link it below. If you like Gothic literature, like Gothic romance and just kind of that Gothic themed stories, definitely check out his channel. So I think part of why I didn't like this book so much was because maybe my expectations were too high. This has happened to me many times when I see a beautiful book like this being really hyped on BookTube and GoodReads and stuff, and I buy a nice hardback cover. And not that I feel like ripped off, but it's kind of like, okay, I will be donating this beautiful book to my local library because a lot of people have enjoyed it. And I did like some of the elements. I gave this book 3 stars. It sounded like I hated it, but to me, it kind of missed the mark on what I expect from reading a Gothic work of literature. And I'm not really sure why that is. I think it might just be the alchemy of fiction, and some people like certain stories and other people don't. But I felt like as I was reading it that the author was checking off boxes. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, Mrs. Danvers' character, check. Oh, letter from a relative saying, she's going, someone's trying to poison me or someone's trying to kill me, check. Now, that's not only from My Cousin Rachel, but also many Gothic romance books that I've read. And that's not the problem. I actually like that. Like when I was reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Check that box off. I'm ready for this Gothic adventure. Because there are specific tropes that you see in these books again and again. But I think the one that she missed or decided not to do, which I think was, for me, the fatal error of this book, was by making her protagonist the strong woman type. Where Gothic literature, going all the way back to the Castle of Otranto, one of the major themes in Gothic literature is the corruption of the innocent. That the innocent governess or somebody who is naive comes to this place, usually it's this wealthy mansion with, subterranean vaults underneath and bats in the belfry, towers, and all kinds of stuff. All the stuff that we love about Gothic literature. The innocent is being corrupted by this environment. And I did see elements of that here with the cousin character, but her character really wasn't developed. That doesn't mean your character has to be a wimp, but there's different types of strength. Like even like the character in the protagonist in Rebecca, she doesn't even have a name. And she's like the wimpiest character you can possibly imagine, but she gains strength through the story. She starts as a girl and becomes a woman. she stands up to the corruption with her goodness and, wins in the end, if you want to say, because of her love for Maxim or whatever. You see this same trope in another Daphne du Maurier story, My Cousin Rachel, which this borrows heavily from. The innocent in that story is Philip, the male character, because he's in love with Rachel, and she's this sophisticated woman, and he's the innocent because he thinks, oh, well, I went to bed with this woman. Of course she wants to marry me. And she's like, sorry, but thanks for giving me the jewels. It's a great twist. I saw a lot of that at work in this, but I think where it failed for me was the main character was so strong and so independent, which in 1950, it did not feel like 1950 to me at all. I appreciated the way she described the beautiful clothes she wore and the fact that she smoked cigarettes, but it did not, the language didn't have a 1950s feel to it. So I didn't get a really strong sense of her character. And then the romance, to me, felt very weak. The male character was very weak, but I didn't feel any spark at all in that romance. And it, like I said, it just didn't feel like 1950s. The fact that her character was getting her master's degree in anthropology, that just felt really kind of off. And I'm not saying that that didn't happen to any woman in 1950, but I was just thinking about how, like, I have an aunt who, still alive, she's in her 90s, was the first woman to ever be accepted into a master's program in engineering at Villanova University. And it was such a big deal. There was like a newspaper article written about it because it was so unusual. And that was in the 70s. And that was just unheard of. So, and then you're talking about a very patriarchal society in Mexico. Now, she does get into that as a theme. And I actually loved the part that she, this whole thing, the theme she was doing about the eugenics and the really scary older character. And then it goes into this really kind of twisted, almost Lovecraftian kind of world. I liked all that. So I gave this book 3 stars because there were a lot of things I liked about it. But if you don't have that central character that pulls me along, that makes me feel like I am that character, I'm not going to love the book. So that's my little rant. I don't know if it's even called a rant. I guess I was a little disappointed, or a lot disappointed, by Mexican Gothic. There's a lot of ways to be a strong woman in life and a strong female character. It doesn't always have to be telling people, like in the book, and this, I rolled my eyes at this, she like says to the guy, fuck off. I just was like, I don't think a woman even said that word back in 1950. I mean, it just, to me, it just didn't ring true. And there was like no Spanish in the book. And other reviews complained about it. It didn't feel like Mexico at all. I remember in My Cousin Rachel, when Philip goes to Tuscany to find Rachel, the way that is described, the how arid and old that world is compared to the green hills of England where he's from. He is this innocent, and there's this ancient world in Tuscany that Rachel's from, where you sense that he's out of his element. I didn't sense that this character, by going deep into leaving Mexico City, where it's more cosmopolitan, into this other world, this village with and they had this herbalist. A lot of the elements were there to make a great story. Now I feel like I'm just babbling about the story, but I did have a lot of frustrations about it. But other people really seem to enjoy it, so that's what counts. And I'm really hoping that the popularity of this book will ignite a popularity in Gothic fiction in general. So those were the books I read for the month of August. Please let me know in the comments below if you read any of these books. If you read Mexican Gothic and you want to comment on my thoughts on the book, please do. I would love to hear what you have to say. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.